What happens when a self-made CEO trades his corner office for a dusty shipping dock and discovers his workers are being punished for mistakes as small as using the wrong tape? Wesley Nolan stood alone in the back corner of his office, arms crossed, eyes locked on the quarterly numbers pinned to the wall. They weren't bad, but they weren't what they should have been either. For 7 years, he'd built the company from scratch, starting with one small warehouse and a rented van. Now there were 9 shipping centers across 3 states. But lately, customer complaints had ticked up, employee turnover was climbing, and 2 district managers had fed him the same sugar-coated report for the 3rd time this quarter. He didn't trust it, so he made a call quiet, direct, and final. "I'll take a week. Disappear from the radar. Go in as a trainee." None of the shipping plant workers had ever seen him before. Most only knew the name W. Nolan from training manuals or the bottom of their pay stubs, and that's exactly what he needed. He picked the Southside shipping plant, warehouse number 4. The numbers looked fine, but everything felt too polished, too perfect. He shaved the beard, ditched the tailored suits, and slipped into a frayed hoodie, steel toe boots, and a name tag that read Rob. A temp agency set it up. No one batted an eye when he showed up Monday morning with a duffel bag and 0 experience. "New guy?" a gruff voice asked as he stepped inside the warehouse, heat pressing down like weight. Wesley nodded. "Yeah, Rob, starting today." The man barely looked at him. "Name's Trent. I'm the manager here. Don't touch anything until you're told. You're on packing line B." The place was fast. Workers moved like clockwork, heads down, barely speaking. The air smelled like cardboard and sweat. Wesley kept his head low and focused, watching, listening. By hour 2, he saw a young woman, maybe 19, get chewed out for sealing a box with clear tape instead of the brown one. "You think this is a joke?" Trent barked. "That's a deduction. 1 more and you're out for the week." Wesley blinked. "A deduction?" The girl, face flushed, nodded. "Sorry, I didn't. Don't talk, just fix it." Wesley leaned over to the guy next to him, a wiry man with tired eyes and calloused hands. "What's he mean by deduction?" Wesley whispered. The man looked over his shoulder before replying. "Every mistake is a point. Get 5, you lose a full day's pay. Get 10, you're suspended." It's his system. That allowed. The man didn't answer, just went back to folding boxes. By the end of the shift, Wesley had seen it 3 more times. A woman written up for stacking labels too slow. A teen dock worker yelled at for taking a water break without asking. A man told to clock out 30 minutes early because he looked tired. That night, Wesley sat on the motel bed staring at a blank notepad. He hadn't expected this. He thought maybe he'd find laziness, maybe some theft. But this was something else. Still, he needed more. The next day, he showed up early. A woman named Olivia Carr helped him into his apron. "You're Rob, right? I'm Olivia. I'll train you on sorting today," she said, tying up her ginger hair with a pencil. She was kind, patient, and knew the system inside and out. She corrected him gently, laughed off his clumsy mistakes, and even handed him her own gloves when his tore. "You'll be fine," she said. "Just don't get on Trent's radar." "Why?" he asked, even though he already knew. Olivia lowered her voice. "Last week, a guy got sent home for using a blue marker instead of black on an address label. He's got 2 kids, no warning, just gone." "Why doesn't anyone say anything?" She hesitated. "Because we need the jobs. And because Trent says he's keeping standards high." Wesley watched her walk back to the line, anger rising in his chest. This wasn't high standards. This was fear. And he was just getting started. Wesley's 3rd day started before the sun rose. By the time he arrived, the main floor was already humming, forklifts backing out of tight rows, tired faces trudging in from the gravel lot. No greetings, no chatter, just movement. He was assigned to inbound freight that morning, unloading cargo from trucks and logging pallet numbers. It was heavier work, physically brutal in the heat climbing off the concrete. Trent didn't say a word when he handed Wesley the scanner and pointed to Dock 3, but the way he lingered, eyes sharp, didn't go unnoticed. The truck driver, A middle-aged man with sleeves rolled up and a clipboard tucked under one arm raised a brow when he saw the crew waiting. "This it," he muttered. 12 pallets and 2 unloaders. Wesley glanced at the other guy beside him, a tall man with a limp and a thick accent. He nodded and pulled the first pallet jack into position without speaking. The work was relentless. Each pallet had to be scanned, logged, and stacked in a specific zone. Half the boxes looked like they'd been dropped from a rooftop. Wesley's arms were shaking by pallet 6. "You knew?" the man finally asked, sweat dripping from his chin. "Something like that. Rob, name's Matteo. You're doing all right. Just don't make us look slow." Wesley didn't answer. His forearms burned, but he kept pace. Matteo's limp slowed him down, but his hands moved with practiced precision. By the end of the unload, Wesley's shirt was soaked through. They clocked out for their 15-minute break, sitting on overturned crates near the back wall. No one spoke at first, then Matteo broke the silence. "You know, I used to manage a crew in Caracas, ran 2 docks. Now I'm lucky to get 27 hours a week." Wesley looked over. "Why only 27? If you hit 30, they gotta offer benefits. Trent keeps us all just under, says it's budget control." Wesley didn't respond. A door slammed across the lot. Trent stepped outside, scanned the yard, then turned back in without saying anything. Even during breaks, the man seemed to float above them, always watching. The warehouse wasn't falling apart. It was functioning technically, but everything was built on fear and withheld trust. That afternoon, Wesley was reassigned to inventory check in the upstairs mezzanine. It was quieter there, away from the forklifts and shouting. Olivia was logging serial codes when he joined her at the metal desk. Her left hand scribbled notes while the right clicked through a battered touchscreen. "How's freight?" she asked without looking up, back breaking. "That's why I fought for this station. I've got scoliosis, freight would wreck me." He paused, surprised. "You told them that?" "I brought a doctor's letter on my 3rd week." Trent rolled his eyes, said he'd try me upstairs like he was doing me a favor. Wesley watched her work for a moment, then asked, "You always been here?" 2 years. Started just before the pandemic. My mom was sick and I needed something close to home. "It's not terrible, but it's not steady either. Some weeks I get 40 hours, some I get 20. Depends on Trent's mood." He leaned in slightly. "Has anyone ever gone to HR?" Olivia stopped writing. Slowly, she turned to face him. "There is no HR, not really. We get a hotline, goes to a voicemail. No one calls back, and if Trent finds out you called, he cuts your shifts." Wesley's stomach tightened. He thought back to the last corporate report that noted no major complaints logged. Now it made sense. The shift dragged into overtime, not by choice. A late shipment arrived without warning, and Trent kept everyone an extra hour to process it. No discussion, no extra pay. "This counts as straight time," Matteo whispered as they moved skids inside. "Not overtime, he calls it mandatory recovery." Wesley's jaw clenched. He forced himself to stay quiet. On day 4, the tone changed. He arrived to find a young man, barely 20, standing near the time clock, arguing with Trent. "I didn't touch it, man, I swear. It was like that when I got here." Trent's voice was low but sharp. "You're saying someone else spilled coffee on the scanner? You expect me to believe that? It wasn't me. I just walked in. You're suspended. 2 days. No exceptions." The kid looked like someone had punched him. "I can't lose 2 days. I'm already short. Should have thought about that before damaging equipment." The silence after was brutal. No one dared intervene. Not even Olivia, who stood frozen at the sign-in table. As Trent walked off, Wesley stepped closer to the man. "What's your name?" "Jalen." "You really didn't do it?" "I swear on my brother's life. It was already wet, probably condensation or something." Wesley nodded. "Hang in there." That night, Wesley skipped dinner and drove to a nearby gas station with public Wi-Fi. He pulled out his work-issued scanner, tapped into the admin backend he still had access to under his real credentials, and ran a log trace on that scanner ID. The last recorded touch was at 4:12 a.m., 4 hours before the warehouse opened. No one should have even been inside. He checked the motion logs. At 4:17 a.m., the door code was used by T. Bennett, Trent. Wesley sat back, heart pounding. He wasn't just hard on his staff, he was lying to cover his own mistakes. The next morning, Wesley ran silent. He moved boxes, ran labels, logged into the system like usual. But his mind was already building the next step. Midway through the shift, he was stationed with Olivia again. "You ever hear about scanner damage before?" he asked quietly, once last month. "Same thing. Blamed on a guy named Jerome, he was fired." No one's heard from him since. Wesley stared at the wall. "What if it wasn't them?" Olivia hesitated. "You're saying Trent's framing people?" "I'm saying I saw proof that the last one wasn't Jalen." She looked at him for a long time. "Why are you really here?" He didn't answer, not yet. That afternoon brought a new storm. A woman named Dana, older, maybe in her 50s, was helping load fragile items onto a truck when a box slipped and cracked open. Inside, ceramic lighting fixtures shattered. Trent came down hard. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "That's a $200 loss." "I didn't mean to, don't care. That's 5 points, go home." Dana's hands shook as she reached for her bag. "That's my rent, Trent, please." "Not my problem, clean up your mess and clock out." Wesley didn't move, he forced himself to watch. Every instinct screamed to step in. But he needed one more day, one more piece. He spent the evening compiling everything: scanner logs, employee schedules, and warehouse access timestamps. It was damning. There were 4 separate incidents where employees were blamed for things that happened outside their scheduled hours, all tied back to Trent. Day 5, Wesley arrived early, before anyone else. He walked into the office, opened the file cabinet with the master key he'd kept from the early days of setting up the plant, and flipped through incident reports. There were dozens, all handwritten, no digital copies, all signed by Trent. He waited until 10 a.m., then walked to the center of the warehouse floor, climbed onto a loading dock, and called out, loud enough to stop the conveyor belt. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Forklifts slowed. Tape guns paused. Heads turned. Trent emerged from the office, eyes narrowed. "What the hell are you doing?" Wesley pulled off his badge. "My name isn't Rob, I'm Wesley Nolan, I own this company." Silence. Then a dozen mouths opened at once. Trent froze. "What kind of joke is this?" "No joke," Wesley said, "and we're done doing things your way." He turned to the crew. "Everyone take your scheduled break now, 15 minutes, I'll be in the conference room. After that, we're going to talk about what's really been happening here." He looked back at Trent. "Pack your things, you're finished." For the first time all week, the warehouse was still. Wesley didn't sit in the conference room. He stood near the whiteboard, arms loose at his sides, watching as the staff filtered in one by one. Some looked stunned, others cautious. Olivia entered last, eyes scanning the room before settling on him. Nobody spoke. The air was brittle. Trent didn't show up. Wesley didn't wait. "I know you've got questions. You deserve answers," he said. "I came here undercover to see what wasn't showing up in reports. What I found," he paused briefly, "shouldn't have been possible in any company with my name on it." Mateo leaned against the wall, arms crossed, but his eyes didn't waver. "I've been here 2 years, he said. "Nobody ever showed up to listen. Why now?" Wesley nodded. "Because I got comfortable. Because I let people I trusted run things without questioning how they did it. That ends today." He looked around the room, making sure to meet the gaze of each person. "I reviewed the logs, the access records, every write-up. I know what was happening, all of it, the deductions. The shift manipulation, the fake suspensions." Jalen leaned forward, voice low. "So I'm not crazy?" "No," Wesley said. "You were targeted. That scanner incident logged hours before anyone arrived. Trent was the only one in the building." The room stirred murmurs, exchanged glances. Dana sat in the corner, arms folded. "He said I cost the company money after a box slipped out of my hands, said it came out of his budget." "It didn't," Wesley said. "It was insured inventory, and no one should lose hours over an accident." From the hallway, the sound of footsteps echoed. Trent appeared in the doorway, face tight, shirt untucked now, a folder clutched in one hand. He stepped inside with deliberate calm. "I've got numbers to show you," he said, voice flat. "You're making decisions without context." Wesley didn't raise his voice. "You're not an employee here anymore. Leave the folder, you'll be escorted out." Trent looked around the room as if expecting someone to speak up. No one did. He placed the folder on the table, then turned and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him. Wesley waited a beat, then faced the group again. "I need to be clear. Fixing this isn't about a speech or firing one man, it's about rebuilding a system that allowed it to happen." Olivia stepped forward. "What does that look like realistically?" "It starts with trust," Wesley said. "Starting next week, every worker here will get scheduled hours in writing. No more last-minute cuts, no more off-the-clock demands, and no more penalties without review." Mateo raised a brow. "And if we get blamed again? There'll be someone on site you can go to, not a hotline, not an email. A person." A woman near the back short with a streak of silver in her braids spoke up. "You going to bring in someone from corporate?" "No," Wesley said. "I'm staying, at least for the next 3 weeks. I've already cleared it." "I'll be on the floor, same shifts you take." That drew a few surprised glances. "You're serious?" Olivia asked. "I'm not leaving until I know this place is safe to work in." He didn't expect applause, he didn't get it, but the room had shifted. The silence wasn't brittle anymore. It held weight, but also space. After the meeting, Wesley returned to the floor. He didn't retreat to the office. Instead, he grabbed a broom and started cleaning the loading zone near the bay doors, where broken ceramic had been swept into a corner the day before but never removed. As he worked, one of the younger workers approached a tall, soft-spoken guy named Derek. "You mind if I ask something?" he said. "Go ahead." "You really didn't know what was happening here," Wesley looked at him. "I knew something was off." "I didn't know how bad it had gotten," Derek nodded slowly. "My brother tried to work here last year, only lasted a week, said it felt like prison rules. I told him he was being dramatic. Guess he wasn't." "I'm sorry he had to go through that," Wesley said. "And I'm sorry you stayed thinking it was normal." Later that afternoon, Olivia found Wesley by the intake desk, flipping through the maintenance logs. "We've got a forklift that hasn't been inspected in 5 months, she said. "I saw. I've already called in a third-party safety team." "They'll be here Monday." Olivia hesitated. "You're not just patching things, are you?" "No," he said. "This isn't a bandage, it's a rebuild." She nodded but didn't smile. "We'll see." The next day, Wesley removed the deduction board from the break room wall himself. It had been mounted behind a glass panel with names, dates, and tally marks. He tore it down, carried it outside, and tossed it into the dumpster. Several workers watched without saying anything. By the end of the week, word had spread to the other plants. Calls came in from 2 site supervisors, both uneasy, both asking if they should review their own policies. Wesley told them yes. Then he made a note to visit each location personally in the next 2 months. A new floor manager was brought in by Sunday, a woman named Tanya who had run fulfillment at the Jacksonville site for 4 years. She arrived with a clipboard, a pair of worn sneakers, and zero tolerance for drama. On Monday morning, she gathered the team. "We're not here to play games. If you need something, you speak up. If something breaks, we fix it. You're not here to be afraid, you're here to work, and I've got your back if you do your part." It wasn't a pep talk, it was a contract. Olivia passed Wesley in the hallway that afternoon. "Tanya's different," she said. "She's earned her reputation," he replied. "People are still holding their breath." "They should," Wesley said. "Not because things will go back, but because change is hard and it's not instant." He didn't promise comfort, he promised progress. In the following days, Wesley helped redesign the feedback system. Anonymous boxes were placed at the exits, not for complaints, but for ideas. 2 were full by the end of the week. One suggestion led to reconfiguring the packing stations to reduce wasted steps. Another proposed rotating shift leads every month to prevent favoritism. Both were implemented. Wesley stayed late every night. He reviewed training videos, rewrote onboarding procedures, and met with the safety inspector twice. He called Jerome the man who'd been fired over the first scanner incident and offered him his job back with full back pay. Jerome declined. He'd found steadier work elsewhere and didn't want to return, but he appreciated the call. On Friday, just before clock out, Wesley stood by the exit, nodding as each worker passed. Olivia stopped at the door. "You look like you haven't slept in 4 days," she said. "I haven't," Wesley admitted. "You going to keep doing this?" "As long as it takes." She looked at him, then gave a short nod. "Then maybe we will too," she left. The door shut gently behind her. Wesley stood there a few seconds longer, listening to the quiet hum of the empty floor. The work wasn't finished. But for the first time in years, it was honest. The following Monday, the warehouse opened under a different rhythm. The pace hadn't slowed, orders still came in, trucks still backed into bays, and boxes still moved across conveyor lines, but something underneath had shifted. It wasn't louder or quieter. It was more human. Wesley arrived before sunrise again, not because he had to, but because he wanted to see how the team started their day without Trent looming over them. Tanya had installed a simple system over the weekend. A dry erase board beside the sign-in station listing daily goals and assignments, with space for volunteers to take on extra tasks. No pressure. No penalties. By 6:30, Olivia was already upstairs reviewing the updated scanner logs. She flagged 2 entries that didn't match the manifest. Tanya joined her moments later, scanning the lines. "Could be a mislabel," Tanya said, pulling out her radio. "Or someone scanned too early. I'll check with freight." Wesley stepped in. "Let it ride for now," he said. "We're not chasing every inconsistency like it's sabotage. Let's fix the system before we assume it's the people." Tanya gave a short nod. "Understood." Downstairs, shifts rotated more smoothly. Mateo was back on dock duty, but now with an assistant, an older man named Calvin who'd transferred from another plant to help close the staffing gap. Calvin had a calm presence, moved deliberately, spoke only when needed, but he knew how to keep a dock flowing. "You Mateo?" Calvin asked while adjusting his gloves. "Yeah, you done this before. 15 years in Memphis. You, 2 here, feels longer," Calvin chuckled once. "Let's make it shorter." They settled into a rhythm without needing to say much else. Mid-morning, Wesley sat with Derek in the small training area off the main floor. They were reviewing the new onboarding slides, simpler, more direct, and stripped of the jargon that had cluttered the old version. "Why'd the old version need 4 pages on box label positioning?" Derek asked, flipping through a binder. "We don't even use half those codes anymore." "It was written by someone who never packed a single box," Wesley said. Derek leaned back. "Makes sense." Wesley studied him for a moment. "You ever think about moving up? Shift lead, maybe?" Derek raised an eyebrow. "I thought those roles were already filled." "They were, but I'm restructuring. I want people who have earned it, not just lasted the longest." Derek didn't answer right away. "I'll think about it," he said eventually. "I'm not sure people trust changes yet." "You don't have to," Wesley said. "You just need to help us make them." After lunch, Wesley walked the outbound corridor and paused near Station 6. A woman with braids tucked under a cap was arguing with someone across the table. Her voice was low, but her tone was sharp. "I said don't touch my scanner unless I give it to you." The man opposite her, a wiry guy with a tattoo along his neck, rolled his eyes. "I was trying to help." "You were backed up. You didn't ask. That's the 3rd time." Wesley stepped in. "Problem here?" he asked evenly. The woman turned toward him, frustrated. "He keeps jumping into my station. Then he logs things under my name. If something gets flagged, it's on me." The man shrugged. "She's slow." "I'm just keeping things moving." Wesley looked at him. "What's your name?" "Tyrell." "I saw your numbers from last week. You've got speed, no question, but speed without boundaries isn't value, it's liability." Tyrell's expression shifted. "I didn't mean anything by it. You didn't check if help was wanted. That's the problem." He turned to the woman. "You want him reassigned. I want him to follow protocol. That's all." Wesley nodded, then turned back to Tyrell. "You'll shadow Calvin for the rest of the day. Learn how to move fast without stepping on anyone." Tyrell opened his mouth to protest, then closed it. He gathered his gloves and walked off. By late afternoon, Tanya found Wesley near the freight intake desk. "We've got a situation," she said quietly. He followed her to the back corridor where two employees stood outside the locker room. One was a tall woman with olive skin and a clipboard tucked under her arm. The other, a man in his 40s, arms folded, eyes locked on the floor. "She caught him making comments," Tanya said. "Started with jokes, then it got personal," the woman spoke up. "He said my kind shouldn't be in charge of anything that involves numbers. I told him to back off. He laughed in my face." Wesley turned to the man. "That true?" The man didn't answer. "I'll ask once." The man looked up. "I was joking." "No, you weren't. You're done here." "But this isn't a warning. You're off the clock, effective now. Tanya will make sure you're escorted out." The man stood there for a second too long. Tanya stepped forward firmly. "Let's go." He walked, not quickly, but he walked. Wesley turned to the woman. "You all right staying the rest of your shift?" She nodded. "I've dealt with worse. You shouldn't have to." By 5, the last outbound truck was sealed. The floor was quieter but not empty. Olivia was still upstairs, logging final serials. Derek was adjusting the new shift board. Mateo and Calvin were stacking empties into the corner bay. Wesley stood near the center of the warehouse, watching it all. Tanya walked up beside him. "You're going to burn out if you keep every plate spinning yourself," she said. "That's the idea." "Until I know the plates are balanced." She folded her arms. "You're not bad at this, but you've got to let people own it. That's how it sticks," he nodded. "I know." That night he called a brief meeting short, voluntary after clock out. About 20 workers stayed. "I'm going to start pulling back," he told them. "Not leaving, just stepping out of the way. Tanya's your lead now, and over the next month we'll be identifying new team leads from within." A few people exchanged looks. "I'm not asking for trust," Wesley said. "I'm asking for accountability. If something slips, speak. If someone rises, support them. No applause, no speeches, just quiet agreement." As the group dispersed, Olivia paused near the door. "You're still rough around the edges," she said. "I'm aware. But you didn't flinch when it counted. That matters." Then she left. Wesley stayed behind, walking the plant one last time before locking up. The light above Station 3 flickered once, then steadied. The air smelled of cardboard and faint citrus cleaner. He stood there for a moment, alone, surrounded by the hum of machines finally resting. There was no ribbon to cut, no press release, but the warehouse had changed for good.